I qualified on pole that day.
Yeah.
And my dad was there. And when I got out of the car, he grabbed me around the neck and told me the news, you know. When you got in a race car, you had to get rid of everything. And sometimes in life now you do that, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do, right? Yeah. Like maybe sometimes I should deal with my problems a little more than putting them over here in a compartment, but that's what a racer does, or at least this racer did. I didn't go. I should have went to the doctor because it was burned pretty bad.
You didn't go to the doctor?
I didn't.
Fedewa.
I know. Well, I mean, it's a blister. It'll heal, right? Kevin made a comment to me like one time. He said, Timmy, you know, as far as the race team goes and everything, he said, I've learned over the years, sometimes it's better for me to just keep my mouth shut. Because when I open my mouth, everybody goes into panic mode.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
All right, so May 12th, the year 2000, you won at New Hampshire. Actually, May 13th, I guess you won. You won a race that I didn't want to cover. I don't think anybody who was there really wanted to be there. Of course, I'm talking about the weekend that Adam lost his life. What do you remember about that weekend?
I remember everything, you know. Unfortunately, I remember me and him, you know, I did the Kyle Petty charity ride. Me and Adam would always ride together, ride next to each other. And I always remember, you know, just anybody that knew Adam knew what a character he was. And I remember it being like 10 degrees out literally, and we're riding across the desert, and he's got his tennis shoes on and no socks, and his legs exposed. I'm like, man, what are you doing? We're riding sideways trying to ride through the wind. And just, you know, so I was a little older than him, probably 10, 12 years older than him at the time, but we'd always, I don't know, for some reason we just, and maybe it was probably through the Petty, his dad's charity ride, that we got to know each other. So I remember talking to him that day beforehand and just shooting the crap about, you know, his future was looking brighter and brighter, right? Like he had a lot of things going on with the Sprint deal and just going cup racing, and, you know, we had knew some same, you know, people in ASA that he'd raced for. So, you know, I remember the practice crash, of course, and then.
Were you on the track at the time?
I think I was in the garage at the time because I never, you know, I don't recall. I know I believe I was in the garage getting ready to go back out, and so I never really seen any of it per se. But I remember we kept right. He went to the hospital, and we didn't really know. We knew it wasn't a very, you know, we knew it was a bad wreck, and we qualified. And the next thing, I mean, I qualified on pole that day.
Yeah.
And my dad was there, and when I got out of the car, he grabbed me around the neck and told me the news. You know, that was as soon as I stepped on. My dad grabbed me and told me.
After qualifying?
Right after I got out of the car. Yep. After we got the pole.
Wow. Yeah.
That was the first thing he said, you know. And so that was, you know, sombering to say the least. And you know, it was just horrible, right? Like we really didn't know what was going on at the time. Of a lot of stuff happening and people getting hurt and killed, and, you know, and for Adam to, at that, what was he, 19, right? You know, it was just an all-out stunner, and no one wanted to, you know, you didn't even want to be at the racetrack. You wanted to just go home, but we all had to carry on, right? And you were there, so it still to this day is tough. I mean, you know, I'm friends with Kyle through just different. We moved into a neighborhood 5 years ago. And I'm doing dishes. I'm looking out the window, and I see my wife talking to this guy that was pushing a stroller, and he's got a hat on and glasses and a goatee, kind of. And she comes back up and says, "Oh, that's Kyle." I said, "Kyle who? Who are you talking?" "That's Kyle Petty." I said, "Come on." She said, "No, he lives right down the road." It was in Charlotte.
Pushing a stroller.
Yeah, he pushed a stroller, and he goes, "Tim lives here?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "Yeah, it's my husband, Tim." Yeah, she goes, "Oh." So, then we walked together sometimes, and we just got to be even, I hadn't really talked with Kyle, at the track, you say hi and this and that. And, but, we've always come back together, it seems like. So, he was, after Adam had died, they asked me to fill in for John Andretti in the 600 one time. John, I think, broke his ribs, and couldn't make the whole race. So Kyle, he asked his dad or whoever if I could get in it. And so we always had this bond. Wow! And from the ride and from that day, and I obviously dedicated the win to Adam.
How were you able to get in the car and set that aside?
I don't know. I think you just, as a racer, I never forget the day that Clifford died at Michigan. I was parked next to Clifford in the Busch garage, and Davey had to go out and qualify that day.
Yeah.
That to me was like, I don't know. We have compartments, right? We all, as drivers and as people, as racers, or, I guess I just have a compartment where I put it, and then I just go to a different compartment when I have to get in the car. And that it's kind of I don't know, something I'm not sure if I like about myself, but I have that, Yeah. It's like I can separate things. And I think a lot of that was just because when you got in a race car, you had to get rid of everything. And sometimes in life now you do that, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do, right? Yeah. Like maybe sometimes I should deal with my problems a little more than putting them over here in a compartment, but that's what a racer does, or at least this racer did. So, but it was hard, man. It's to this day, and then 6 months later, not even when Kenny got killed there as well. And, we almost lost Corelli. And the only guy you ever know, Rick Corelli, to walk away from that injury, right? Talk about toughness. And Tony Roper was a friend of mine. My dad raced with Dean, his dad. It's like we lost a lot of people. We didn't really know it back then. I guess we knew people were dying and getting hurt, but I didn't feel like it was. Never felt like I was in danger. And I know you've interviewed every racer out there, and they all say the same thing, right?
It's going to happen to somebody else.
Yes, Kyle has said that. I've heard Kyle talk about it. And
how easily did you wear the Hans or the Hutchins?
I wore the Hans, and that's another story.
Yeah.
So if we can go back before this, back in like the early 90s. Who designed the Hans device? There was two of them. Dr. Hubbard. He was Michigan State guy.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We were like 5 minutes from East Lansing, from the campus. He knew I was a racer. We had a speed shop there, and he knew that he brought this device over, and it was bulky then. It was big and bulky, and he set it on my mom's desk, and he said, "Would you be willing to wear this in ASA?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I don't know. Leave it here and let me think about it." And my mom's like, "You should wear that." I'm like, "Mom."
Of course your mom's going to.
Yes. I said, "Mom, I'm not wearing that. I can't."
Wow.
So I gave it back to him. This was probably 89 or 90.
That far back, really?
Yeah, and he was just developing it then.
Yeah,
and then fast forward, obviously, to what we all hated. Dale Earnhardt was killed. I never forget, we had to go to Atlanta to their place and get fitted. And the first thing when I walked in there, he said, "You remember me?" I said, "Well, hell yes, I remember you,
Wow.
He said, "I hate that we have to." I said, "I hate it too." And, we shook hands, but it was.
Now, did you not start wearing it until after Dale?
I don't think so. I think maybe, I forget the timeline, but I remember Jimmy Johnson had one early.
Yeah.
He tried to give it to Blaze because we all hung out together, and Blaze didn't wear it and got killed at Charlotte. I can't recall that year.
So you knew
They
Adam.
were just coming out.
You knew everybody.
I knew everybody. I mean, we all hung out, together,
Wow.
I knew Tony just through some truck stuff and but everybody knew everybody. I mean, it was like just a small crowd, even the truck guys and the Busch guys were more so connected than, Jimmy was a Busch Series racer, right? Like he drove for
Herzogs.
Thank you, Herzogs.
Yeah.
And, then he was always a Chevy guy. And so we were friends and and Blaze, and we all hung out in small circles,
Wow. So you parted ways with CC Welliver, I guess, midway through 2001?
I believe so, yeah.
What happened?
I remember just getting a call. I mean, I knew things weren't going good. Frank called me and said, "Man, I hate to do this, but I'm going to have to fire you, I have to let you go." I don't know what the exact wording was, same difference. I think they were wanting more, I was wanting more, and we weren't getting it. So that was that, and I think so then I really didn't know what I was going to do. I kind of scrambled around. I think Buckshot was in and out of the car at the time for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think he had business things going on, and he was trying. And he, out of the blue, he called me, and I was able to piece some races together with Gary Cogswell, crew chiefing, and that was a lot of fun. Actually, I had a blast. We ran good. Seems like every time we went out, and then after that, really, I think that was my last year really just full time racing for anybody in particular. I pieced together some stuff, but it was, it got harder progressively, right? If you didn't have a lot of money, and you get older, and I'd raced several races in the Busch Series, so it is what it is at that point.
All right, so Talladega 2002, like 100 cars wreck on the 10th lap, not the 10th lap or whatever. And I think people vaguely know that Jason Keller won the race, but I think aside from the wreck, what everybody remembers about that wreck or about that race is you.
Yeah, it was.
You were planning to start in park.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
No, it was. It was Mike Wallace's. It was Fred Biaggi's car. It was Mike's backup car.
Okay.
And they had pulled it off the track. I was there hoping something.
Yeah.
That there would be something I could drive or get in or whatever. And Fred said, "Hey man, if I pull off the backup car, we qualified." So we obviously when we qualified, we taped it. We taped it all up and didn't have much creature comforts for the race, and it was hot, and we were going to run 10 laps, and we just went out, and then they had the big wreck on the backstretch, and I was laying back a little bit. So when it happened, I was ready for it and just kind of sifted my way through the carnage and come out. And
you weren't involved in the wreck in any way? Okay, yeah.
No, because I seen it all. I just remember coming off of 2, and there it was, Johnny Sauter. I mean, there was people. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
It was obviously the big one.
So how soon was the call made to, okay.
Kevin Caudell. Kevin Caldwell, yes.
Yeah.
Late Kevin Caudell was crew chiefing. And he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "What do you mean what do I want to do?" He said, "You want to keep running?" I said, "Well, sure, if I can, that'd be awesome, So he said, "Well, heck yeah, we'll keep going." So, we just kept going. There was only, probably 7, 8 cars, and I think there was only 3 of them, me, Stacy Compton, and Jason Keller, and maybe one other one that were not involved, right?
Yeah.
So I just, we had hold down qualifying shocks on back then when you could run them, and I remember the right front shock or right rear shock broke, so we had like 2 shocks that were working it. It was like, and no air. I really burnt my leg up bad, burnt my foot up bad, and
at what point did you know that you were in trouble? When he said, "Hey, you want to see how far we can go?"
I knew it was hot, but I didn't.
When did you realize that maybe you were in trouble with your foot and leg?
About halfway, it started. I had to burnt my butt. I had to put my gloves up under my butt to keep, You know, it was hot. There was no air in the car, and no, you know, there wasn't a whole lot we could do about it either. I mean, it was, you know, under pit stops and whatnot. But you know, back then, I think you were made. You know, race car drivers were tough, and I felt.
You compartmentalize.
There you go. I've been burnt before, right? I got scars all over the place from 180 headers and late models, burning my sides of my legs and my foot and bottoms of my feet were, you know, and the heat never, I don't know why, but I always managed heat well. Like I guess just from football practice back in the day when you had hard ass coaches that wouldn't let you drink, you know, out of the fountain
until after practice.
Right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
105 degree days in August. Right. So I was in shape. I mean, I worked. That was one thing I can say throughout my career when I drove. I was always in extraordinary shape, like driving shape. I felt like if I was going to, you know, if someone was going to pay me a lot of money to do this, I was going to at least whatever I could do to make it better, right? So being in shape was probably the biggest part of that.
Was there ever a chance that you were going to get out of that car?
No. I mean, no. I mean, it wasn't like you don't. And the thing is, you don't realize it until you get out. That's when you know it's not good at the time, but you know when you're going and going and going, you somehow override that pain. And but when you get out, then it's like, oh, that was probably not the smartest thing to do, right? It's I was spotting for Harvick, you know, a few years ago, early on when I started for him, and we burned his feet up real bad. I don't know what had happened, and he had blisters all, and I said, man, I remember them days, you know?
Yeah.
And he never said a word. Just, as most race car drivers don't. They just keep digging.
Did you say anything to the crew?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I said,
really?
I don't think, I mean, I think Kevin asked me how I was doing in there a couple times, you know, and I said, fine. I think, you know, just,
yeah.
I mean,
how badly were you hurt?
You know, it was mostly just. I mean, I still have the scars on my legs, but
do you really?
And I remember going to Richmond. I think it was the next weekend. I had the side of my foot where my little toe is, where my foot rests against the firewall, got infected real bad because I didn't go to the doctor. I thought it would get better, you know, and I remember him. He had to clean it all with a needle, and
after Talladega.
Yes.
Wow.
The very next week, I didn't go. I should have went to the doctor because it was burned pretty bad.
You didn't go to the doctor.
I didn't. My
Fedewa.
I know. Well, I mean, it's a blister; it'll heal, right? That was another life lesson when they stick a needle in your blistered foot. Yeah, your foot's pretty sensitive. That's the most pain I think I ever felt. I was close to passing out, so another life lesson. But you know, it was still to this day. People when they replay it, like someone will call me and they'll hear it on Sirius, or they'll hear see it on TV.
That's the only race my brother ever attended. He was in the Army. He was down at Fort Rucker, and I said, "Man, you got to come to Talladega. You got to come to Talladega. You won't believe that. You won't believe it." And he was down on pit road. And so he didn't even see the wreck. So for the next 2 or 3 hours, it was whoop.
Yeah. 3 cars, yep.
And he goes, "Ricky, I wasn't too impressed."
Yeah, there's, that was it's amazing that, I mean, we still have wrecks like that, right? Like you never know with speedway races.
All right, a couple more questions. Number one, I asked you at Las Vegas when we met, are you still cooking?
I do. I mean,
okay, you're actually a gourmet cook.
Yes, not a chef, but I'm not a certified chef. I went to school for hotel and restaurant management.
Did you?
I went to. I grew up in I worked at Italian restaurants for I don't know 2 different ones for probably 5 or 6 years of my early.
As a cook?
I did everything, yeah.
Really?
Waited tables a little bit. I was only 15 when I started, and I was working, bussing tables and probably a lot of stuff I wasn't supposed to be doing at a bar back then. But they had a great restaurant, and I got to watch a few really good chefs, and a lot of them taught me what they were doing, and it's pretty cool, right? Then I also my grandmother was a baker for 35 years, of great-grandmother, up in Cadillac, Michigan at a restaurant. And so when I would go home to her house for Christmas or all these cakes and baked goods and breads, and plus she'd cook, she was an awesome cook as well. And my grandmother and her two sisters, they all worked in food service. So really my whole family always was cooking something. So it was just a passion of mine, and still is. And around the holidays is probably my favorite time, just because I get to cook a lot more.
All right. So you talked just a second ago about being in great shape and that being what helped you through Talladega. How can you be such a good cook and maintain that just pisses me off.
Well, then then was different. Now, I mean, I show the pounds too, but I guess back then you done so much, and I was so busy. I really didn't have the time to cook, but you made it a priority, and it was kind of like my escape from racing would be my cooking, right? Like I could,
yeah.
That's kind of the way I dealt with it. If I could cook for a group of people, that was always fun to do, and kind of an escape from work, I guess.
All right. How did spotting come about? I did not know. You mentioned we've got a program from the first Brickyard 400 over here, and you said that was 1994, and you said that you actually spotted that race.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with me wanting to spot then. That
okay.
was just I was just at the track.
Yeah.
And with Ray and Dan, they had a cup car that Jimmy Hensley was driving in the inaugural Brickyard, and Ray, the owner, was spotted normally, but you needed two there.
Yeah.
So I was I was in turn 2, he was in turn 4. And I remember sitting right up above Vic Irvin. He sat right below me.
Yeah.
And Ernie, I think, was winning the race.
Yeah.
And him and someone wrecked right in front of me and cost Ernie Ernie had the fastest car.
Yeah.
And I remember Vic just standing up and cussing and, ready to fight. And just I was in awe of all these people that were around me, like the different racers, because I was new to it, especially in the Cup Series, right? Like, that was my first, I think, real venture spotting. And then,
so how did it come about that you pursued
I didn't have a ride.
Okay.
But like about 2003, I guess I raced for Armando and stuff in the Supercuts car and the Hot Tamales car, and then when that didn't wasn't going right, and I could see things, the light at the end of the tunnel. I knew I wanted to be in racing still, but I didn't have money, and I was getting older, and Bill Elliott, I think Eddie DeHaan was spotting for Bill at the time, and Eddie had to do some other stuff and couldn't make a couple races, so they asked me if I would spot when Eddie couldn't, so I did, and then I started doing Bill a little bit more and more the next year, and then pretty soon, I had a full-time gig spotting, so I really never looked back, but just doing a few races here and there, and then spotting seemed to get more and more. It's grown over the years exponentially, like from when I started in 2004 or 5 with Bill to what it is now has evolved from just saying clear outside to what it is now is having to be a psychologist and a crew chief helper, and I guess just for whatever driver you can spot up or spot down for. But a lot of drivers now like a lot more input, and back then the older guys, they didn't want to hear you much. They wanted to drive the car, and now the young guys, they want every little bit of information you can give them.
When you made that last start in, I guess, the Nationwide Series or whatever it was at that time, or truck, whatever your last start was, did you know at that time that was going to be your last start?
I don't think so. I never really thought it would end, I mean, I thought I just never, I didn't retire. Everybody says, when did you retire? I said, I never retired. I mean, I didn't, I just didn't have a ride, and I couldn't, I didn't have the money to go get it and do it anymore. And so I never planned it to be my last hurrah, so, but it is what it is. I wish I could have drove some more, but you know, I'm also happy to been able to jump over and spot and have a good career and still be going in NASCAR. I mean, a lot of guys, you know, don't have that opportunity. So I've been doing it I've had a hard card for a lot of years now, right? So that's pretty cool.
How did you start working with Kevin Harvick?
Well, I was fighting for Ambrose at Petty, and then he was getting ready to go back to Australia. He was going to run one more year and then back to Australia. Well, Kevin, the deal with Rodney and the 4-car come up, and they were kind of interviewing, and they wanted audio. So we got some audio to him, and this is Kevin's. This is what I've heard. Kevin said, they didn't tell Kevin any of the names. So Kevin said, I like this guy's voice, whoever is this. And they said, well, it's Fedewa. And he said, okay. So they come and talk to me, and I talked to Rodney and talked to Kevin, and you know, they were putting together this team, and man, I was just blessed to be able to be a part of the 4-car, and that's how it came about.
What kind of learning curve did the two of you have with each other?
You know, it wasn't too bad. I mean, we just, you know, I think we'd done some testing in the off season, and it never really was like, I don't remember it being like a struggle, and we had such fast cars.
Yeah.
I mean, that first year was like Kevin was on a mission. I don't think if I'd have said 2 words, he'd have cared. I mean, he was going, and you know, we had some issues like back then you had group qualifying, and group qualifying was actually harder than spotting for the race, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just getting the guys out there and getting a big opening. You always wanted a huge opening. Well, everybody's sitting at the end of pit road with a minute left before they go, and you're trying to jockey for a position, and that's your job to get them a hole. So we had some, you know, like, I need a bigger hole than that, Timmy, or something like that, but we never really had any issues. And the growing pains, I mean, we kind of, you know, if he had a problem with you, he'd tell you. That's a cool thing about Kevin. I mean, if you did your job, you really didn't hear much from him, and if he had something to say, he'd say it. So it was always a pretty, you know, me and Rodney we'd always talk, and it was pretty much open communication, and there wasn't too many growing pains.
I don't know exactly how to put this, so I'm just going to read it straight off my list of questions. Kevin could get kind of uppity on the radio during races. When that happened, how did you handle it?
You know, I just tried to.
You were talking about being a psychologist earlier.
Yeah, and I guess I always. That's the one part about being an ex-driver that in spotting I feel like can help you.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I tried not to say something that I would have never wanted to hear from my spotter. You know, I would always say, just for your information, the 2-car is riding the wall now, and you know, I would never say you need to ride the wall. You need to get low. You need to, you know, whatever it is that you know. I would kind of make it be his idea, and I think that's the way a driver wants to hear it, you know. I mean, that's the best way I could help Kevin. But I will, going back to what you said about Kevin could be uppity on the radio, that was probably more pre-Keelan than post-Keelan and Piper.
Okay. So he mellowed.
He did. And Rodney and him had talks about this subject, not just the spotter, but they had talks, and not just, I think Kevin made a comment to me like one time. He said, Timmy, you know, as far as the race team goes and everything, he said, I've learned over the years, sometimes it's better for me to just keep my mouth shut, because when I open my mouth, everybody goes into panic mode. And that was like, and I thought about it for a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, that's a true statement, because, you know, when the driver starts going off on a tirade about this or that, it really, everybody does kind of get in a panic, and it's not the most productive time for your team. And if that happens once a weekend or twice a weekend or every weekend, then that's not really productive. So I think Kevin learned that over his his career. And again, now I'm not saying if you didn't do your job, you weren't going to hear about it.
Yeah.
But he never really dealt with it in a public display when I was there. Like I was always felt respected, and there's times where chippy shit, that goes on that's just racing. I mean, I know when I drove, I probably wished I wouldn't have said a few things I said to crew chiefs and spotters, but when I got out of the car, I don't even remember saying them. It's like it's kind of a sad excuse, but I mean that's heat of the moment stuff, and really, as a spotter, I've tried to not take that stuff with you. You do to a certain extent, but you also have to let a lot of that go. I mean, you just have to, because we all know how competitive it is, and it's just like football. When you watch it every Sunday, I'm sure them guys say a lot of stuff on the sidelines and back and forth in and out of the huddle, but that don't mean you lost the respect of your teammates, or that you don't respect. You have to kind of just put your big boy pants on and play ball, right?
Yeah. You were telling me something that I did not know before we started recording. We were scheduled to do this interview, I guess, last week before, whenever it was, but then you were going to Canada. I assumed that you were going to hunt or something, but you told me about your daughter skating.
Yeah, she's going to be 15, and she's been skating since she was 4. We took her skating just by chance for something to do, and then one thing led to another, and she showed interest and really loved it, and asked her mom to keep taking her back. And her and Kelly have pretty much dedicated their lives to it for the last 12 years.
Wow.
She trains in Canada. She trains here. It's serious, but everybody asks me, when she go in the Olympics, and we're trying. She's a junior level skater. Senior level goes to the Olympics, so this was her first year in the junior ranks, and I think she was like 23rd in the country, and for a junior, and for her first year, and she made her first sectionals this past season. So we're training hard, hoping for bigger and better things next year. But it's like racing. It ain't cheap. You have to you have to pursue sponsors.
Can't I just buy an engine?
I know, right? But and for me, it's a foreign thing, right? Like I know how to develop, or I have a pretty good idea how I could develop a young racer, but a young skater, it's foreign to me. And but also in the same aspect, it's competitiveness, and it's competing against other people and having a mindset. So I feel like I help her a lot that way, and I help her. I help her develop relationships, and I think so that's you just got to look at it a different way. But it's a lot like, there's a lot of politics in figure skating. If you it's crazy.
So it's like NASCAR.
It is like NASCAR. It's exactly like NASCAR, only it's on ice.
Wow. Now, what's her name?
Her name's Willow Fedewa.
Willow Fedewa.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Hopefully you'll see big things out of her in the next few years.
Good deal. Anything else you'd like to get across?
No, I just appreciate you doing the show and the podcast, and it means a lot to a lot of us guys that ran in the Busch Series and ran back in the 90s and 2000s. And, I think I feel like I was blessed to race when, not that racing's not cool now, but it was a different feel and a different vibe. And now it's I feel like we're getting back to that in some sense, but I also feel like, I was lucky enough to race in the coolest of times, for sure.
Well, it was more fun during that time frame, late 90s, than it should be legal to have.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
There's no cell phone. Well, you had cell phones, but there was no Twitter.
Yeah.
There was no, and not that we did anything bad, but, it was.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right.
No, not Randy LaJoy.
Not too bad. I mean, but now it's, you have to be guarded in everything you say, everything you do, every interview you make. And back then I think we just had a little bit more raw fun, and there was a lot more characters because of that. because you didn't get persecuted for every little thing that you said or did. So there's a lot more characters, but I feel blessed to have been around when NASCAR was at its, going up and towards a peak, and just be a small little teeny part of it.